Etrian Odyssey is a series of JRPG games with an interesting premise, taking place in a post-apocalyptic Earth with traces of the old civilization beneath the world's saviors, the Yggdrasil trees, and their layers of labyrinthine floors. Within the long corridors are monsters of many varieties of mythological and fantasy inspiration, but I'm not here to talk about the fodder. I'm ready to talk about the guardians of each stratum in the first 4 Etrian Odyssey games. Keep in mind that while this isn't a special episode series, this will be uploaded in 2 parts with 2 games worth of guardians covered in each video. With that out of the way, I'm the Kitsune Hawk, and today we'll be starting our analysis of Etrian Odyssey's Strata Guardians. So get out your pencils, trivia enthusiasts, because this is character development. Naturally, our analysis begins with the Strata Guardians of the original Etrian Odyssey, which begins with the boss of the Emerald Grove, Fenrir. Fenrir is based on a wolf of the same name from Norse mythology. Much like its Etrian counterpart, Fenrir was a giant wolf known to violently devour its prey. And just as the Etrian Fenrir is described as leading the pack of wolves wreaking havoc in the Yggdrasil Labyrinth's Emerald Grove, the Norse Fenrir was created by the prankster god Loki to wreak havoc on the 9 worlds around Yggdrasil. Fenrir was ultimately brought down by the gods after being bound and gagged, whereas the Etrian Fenrir constantly summons its underlings to overwhelm new players. But these wolves, known as skulls, are named after another Norse wolf, and one whose name has often been confused with Fenrir's, enough to have some believe that Fenrir was a wolf who went by multiple names. Moving on to the primitive jungle's guardian, we have Cernunnos. This one's actually quite easy, seeing as the in-game records state that this boss was named by explorers who were reminded of an ancient god upon seeing it. True enough, Cernunnos was the name of a horned god from Celtic mythology. Cernunnos was both a god of fertility and the king of animals, just as his Etrian counterpart uses his turns to summon fodder enemies to protect him. Cernunnos was also considered to be a god of the underworld, which may explain his fairly demonic design. Due to a lack of details involving the creature's lore and design, I'll be skipping past the queen ant since it just seems to be a fantasy-type insect that looks more like a mantis than an ant, with little to help in terms of its codex entries in Etrian Odyssey 1, 3, and Untold. The true guardian of the Azure Rainforest, Corotrangle, was not an easy one to figure out, that's for sure. It's obvious that it's based on a ray, but that's not a creature seen too often in common mythology. No, indeed. Rays are, however, a common animal in Polynesian mythology, seen as a sacred animal responsible for the creation of the land, the people, and the culture they make of it. Similarly, Corotrangle's description in the original Etrian Odyssey's bestiary describes it as being a guardian spirit, as well as both the master of water and air, just as Polynesian mythology credits rays for the presence both under and above the water. Finally, for the original Etrian Odyssey, we have the guardian bird of the sandy barrens, Iwaoro Penelap. This bird's name isn't the only formidable thing about it. Anyone that's played the original Etrian Odyssey can tell you that this bird puts up quite a fight, in the original version where it would revive unless it was the last foe on the floor, and in the remake where it has much more health. Either way, this bird has command over both fire and electricity, likely nods to the Thunderbird of Native American mythology and the Phoenix of Greek mythology, the latter also explaining the constant reviving that this guardian bird is capable of. Iwaoro Penelep's massive size and mix of white and gold plumage may also be derived from the Roc, a bird from Arabian mythology large enough to carry an elephant back to its home in the mountains, and the Garuda, a half-human, half-golden bird from Indian mythology, who, according to the Hindu interpretation of the myth, survived a trial by the gods that ended with him being struck by lightning and surviving to continue his journeys. Much as Iwaoro Penelep is highly resistant to electric attacks, is notably large in Etrian Odyssey 4 and Untold, and is considered another sacred guardian of the forest folk, just like Corotrangle. Our research now takes us to Etrian Odyssey 2 Heroes of Lagard, starting with the guardian of the ancient forest, the Chimera. The Chimera is a creature from Greek mythology, described as having the head and body of a lion, the second head of a goat, and a serpent for a tail. The Chimera is also described as being able to breathe fire, all traits seen in its Etrian counterpart, though it also adds a pair of bat-like wings, most likely inspired by the manticore of Persian mythology, which had a lion's body, a bat's wings, and a scorpion's tail, which would help to explain the Etrian Chimera's ability to use poison attacks. From here, though, there isn't much else, but it is neat to see a combination of 2 similar creatures from 2 classical societies. As far as I can tell, Hellion isn't based on any sort of demon in particular, and the fact that she was renamed to the even more generic Flame Demon in Etrian Odyssey II Untold further drives that point. So for this reason and the lack of material within the Codex, I'm afraid I'll have to pass on this Guardian. The third Strata Guardian of Etrian Odyssey II is especially infamous amongst fans, yet Scala's portrayal is quite an interesting one. Scala was the name of a sea nymph from Greek mythology who was loved by Glaucus, the fisherman turned sea god. However, it was the sorceress Circe who was madly in love with Glaucus, and in order to have Glaucus for herself, she poured a potion into Scala's sea domain, transforming her into a sea monster made of an amalgam of animal parts from the waist down. Scala's Etrian counterpart definitely keeps this aesthetic, with her appearing human from the waist up, but with the rest of her body being made of parts from various sea creatures. Granted, there is some deviance here, seeing as Scala is most frequently associated with wolves, and instead of being encountered in an ocean, at least in Etrian Odyssey II, she's fought within a frozen forest deep underground. Regardless, despite her infamy amongst fans, she's fairly close to the mythos of her Greek inspiration. Moving forward to Petal Bridge, we have Harpuia. Harpuia, as previously discussed on this show, is a more traditional spelling of harpy, a creature from Greek mythology described as half human and half bird of prey, just like the Etrian Harpuia. Other than that, she doesn't have much else aside from her command of the wind and habit of abducting her prey, two major characteristics of the Greek harpies. Finally, we have the Guardian of the Heavenly Keep, the Colossus. Interestingly, the term Colossus doesn't actually refer to a particular mythological creature, but rather a type of statue often dedicated to the gods and emperors of Greece and Rome and noted for their large size. Yes, the Colossus is quite large, but is more fittingly named the Juggernaut in Etrian Odyssey II Untold, seeing as it's not the largest creature seen in the game, but is certainly a beast worthy of being called a powerful and nigh unstoppable force. And that concludes the first half of the Etrian Odyssey series Strata Guardians thus far. Having delved into Norse, Celtic, Polynesian, Persian, Hindu, and Greek cultures with just the first two games, I can definitely say that this is hardly scratching the surface of Etrian Odyssey's worldly scope, and there will be many a surprise in the analysis of the third and fourth installments in Part 2. This has been Character Development. Thanks for watching, and if you're in need of more character trivia while you wait on the second half, why not check out the previous episode on Shantae from the series of the same name? Just use the annotation on the right. And if you want something a little different, why not check out Legend Fairy? She's a Let's Player whose channel I came across a few weeks ago and has some pretty good variety in games she's showcased already. Just use the annotation on the left. Thanks for watching, and take care, everyone.